Okay, so the first thing we need to do when we find the complex conjugate is change the sign of the imaginary part. So we need to simplify the square root of -8. We got a square root of -1 times square root of 4 times square root of 2. So we can pull the square root of -1 out as I. The square root of 4 is 2. So we'd have 7 plus 2i radical 2. And then the conjugate would just mean we change the sign. So it'd be 7 minus 2i radical 2. Okay, for this problem, we just need to know what the discriminant is. Remember, that's what's underneath the radical, b squared minus 4ac. If we want to have complex roots, we would have to have that value being less than 0. So we set it up and start solving, and we would see the answer right there. So also remember that if it is two real solutions, the discriminant is positive, and if it's one solution or a double root, the discriminant would have to be 0. Okay, so if we're talking about the range, we're worried about the y values here. Remember, the number on the outside moves the graph up and down. So with this one, it's just been moved left 3 units, and the vertex is still on the x-axis. So if we look at A, that one has been moved down too. And then if we look at B, that one's been moved up 9 units. And that one's been moved up 1, and D would be our correct answer. It's from 0 to infinity would be the matching range. Alright, so I think the easiest thing to look for on this one first off is that the original equation is opening up. So we know if it's going to be reflected over the x-axis, it needs to be opening down, so it cannot be A or B. So now, we could just type them into our calculator and see which one is the actual reflection. Or we could multiply everything by -1. So if we take a look at this typed in, I got the original and then C typed in, and we can just visually take a look at it and see if it's a reflection. So we can see that this is a reflection. So our answer would be C. Okay, so this is something that we have not done before, but if we're trying to find the x-intercepts, we know the y values would be 0 there. So the first thing we're going to do is go ahead and solve this. So we can start by subtracting 9x squared from both sides. Then we're going to have to divide everything by 4 and then take the square root to get y by itself. And then we could type these two into our graphing calculator and see where they cross the x-axis. There is another way to solve this, and I'll show you after we do it this way. So we take the square root, we got to put plus and minus in. So we can go to our calculator and graph this, and we will see where it crosses the x-axis. After I go through this, we'll go over how to do it by hand. Okay, so if we wanted to solve this by hand and we're looking for the x-intercepts, we know the y value is 0, so we can just plug in 0 for y and then solve this for x, and we will get out positive and negative 2. The same thing we did by using the graphing calculator. Okay, so if we're trying to write an equation of a circle, we need to remember that the inside always lies and be x minus h squared plus y minus k squared equals the radius squared. So we would have x minus 3 squared plus y plus 6 squared equals 225 over 64. We need to make sure we square the radius. So our answer would be A. So I want to make sure you haven't forgotten the general form of a circle. Okay, so first off, hopefully you guys remember that you can type these directly into your calculator. I will also solve it by hand. So if we look at 9 minus I squared, that actually is something squared minus something squared, so it factors to 3 plus I times 3 minus I. And we have 3 minus I in the denominator. Those reduce to 1, and our answer would just be 3 plus I, so B. But we also could just type this into our calculator and let it solve it for us. Remember, we don't want to use the fraction bar because it didn't like that, trying to reduce them like that. So you want to use parentheses for your numerator, divided by, then parentheses for everything in your denominator. Remember, this will work with complex numbers. So we get the same answer out. Okay, so looking at this one, all we need to do is plug in 3 minus 4i for C, and then solve it for D. So I think the easiest thing to do right here would be to add D to both sides and subtract 7 from both sides. So we end up with negative 4 minus 4i. So your answer would be A. Okay, with this problem, we would need to set up a quadratic. So we know that the length equals twice the width plus 3 yards. So we'll just say that W times 2W plus 3 equals the area, which they told us was 50 yards squared. So now we can multiply this out and then get it equal to 0, and we can go through the quadratic formula to solve it. So negative b plus or minus the square root of b squared minus 4ac all over 2a. And remember how we talked about typing these into our calculator. You can use the fraction bar and type it in just like we write it out. So we type this in. Hopefully you'll see one of the solutions you're going to get negative solution, which can't be right, and the other one you're going to get 4.3, but that is the width, not the length. So we have to plug in 4.3 for W to solve for the length, and we will get that it is a 11.6. Alright, so with this one, to check the value of the discriminant, you've got to make sure it's equal to 0. So we subtract 9 from both sides, and then we can just do b squared minus 4ac. And remember, if it's negative, complex solutions. If it's 0, 1 solution. If it's positive, 2 real solutions. So with this one, we would get that the value is 36. 16 squared minus 4 times 1 times negative 5. Okay, so with this one, the first thing you should look for is a reflection through the x-axis, because we see it's negative, so we know it can't be A or B. And then I think the easiest thing to do would just be to type it in. We know it has a stretch factor of 2 and opening down, but let's just type it in and graph it. Okay, so when we type this in, we can actually see that it has been moved 3 units to the left and looks like 5 units up. So that should be enough to find our correct answer. Don't forget you could have done negative b over 2a to find the x value of the vertex and then plugged it back in to find the y value. So the correct answer is C. That's the one that's 3 units to the left and 5 units up. Okay, so for this problem, we could use what we know about inequalities to find the answer. First off, we shouldn't think it would be C or A, because notice we're shading on both sides of the lines, and we cannot do that. So hopefully we notice the one that's opening up is greater than, so we shade on the inside of that one, and the one that's opening down is less than, so we shade on the inside of that. We can verify that by typing it into our calculator, and we will get that our answer is B. Okay, to figure out this problem, we just need to find where the center is at and what the radius is, and we need to remember the inside lies. So if we look at this, it looks like we went back 1 and up 2, so our center's at -1, +2. And our radius is, looks like 3 units. So now we'd have x plus 1 squared plus y minus 2 squared equals 9. So our answer would be C. Alright, so with this one, there's a bunch of different ways to kind of approach this problem, but I think the first thing we should do is arrange everything in descending order. So we'd have 3x squared minus 6x, leave a little space, plus 3y squared plus 18y plus 18. So now, hopefully, well, looks like I went and subtracted the 18 from both sides. Remember, we want to complete the square for both of these, so we need that a value to be 1. So I'm going to factor out a 3 out of everything on the left-hand side. And then we will divide both sides by 3. So now we need to think about, well, what is half of -2? negative 1 squared is positive 1, so we need to add a positive 1 to both sides. And then we would do half of 6 is 3, 3 squared is 9, so we need to add a 9 to both sides. And I forgot my parenthesis. So now we know this factors to x minus 1 squared plus y plus 3 squared equals 4. Okay, with this problem, they want to know when y2 minus y1 equals 2. So we want to subtract the second equation, or the first equation minus the second equation, and then we'll set it equal to 2. So we do that, we end up with x squared minus 3x plus 2. So now we got to set it equal to 2. And we can go ahead and solve it. We subtract 2 from both sides. And then notice we can just factor an x out. And we'd have x times x minus 3. So we'd have two solutions, 0 and positive 3. But it says given that x is greater than 0, so we can't include that as a solution. So our answer would just be B. Alright, so with this problem, again, you want to eliminate any answers you know are incorrect. We could also just do a quick sketch by hand. So if we look at this one, we know the one opening down is greater than, so we shade on the outside. Notice we went right 3 down 2 to get to the vertex. And then on the other one, it's opening up, we go back 1, down 1. And we would shade on the outside since it's less than. So the one that matches that is B. Notice the D, they're flipped around. Again, you could use your calculator to verify this. Okay, so we haven't got into tangents, but tangent just means it touches in one point. So if we're looking at a circle here, that means it hits the x-axis and y-axis like that. In the center, would be right there in the middle. And it could happen in any quadrant like this. So what that's telling us is that the absolute value of the a and b value have to be the same because they're just the radius. And that we'd have to have c equal to a squared because that is our radius. Okay, so with this one we have not done these either, but you will have these formulas on your reference sheet. So if we take a look at this, we know that directrix is equal to 6 and that the focus is equal to 2, negative 3. So this is the general form of the parabola. And we know that the formula for the directrix is h minus 1 over 4a, so I set that equal to 6. And that we also know the x value of the focus is equal to h plus 1 over 4a. So now we can get h by itself and use a system of equations to solve. So now I'm going to take that 6 plus 1 over 4a and plug that in for h into the other equation. So we subtract 6 from both sides and we have negative 4 equals 2 over 4a, which we could reduce if we wanted to, or we can just think of this as cross multiplication and end up with negative 16a equals 2. Then we just have to divide both sides by negative 16, and we get that A equals negative 1/8. So notice the only possible solution right now, looking at our formula sheet, would have to be A, because the y value is negative 3 of the focus.